Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let me show you some tips for searching for files on your Mac. So if you work with a lot of files on your Mac, you may want to get good at searching those files. One of the main properties of files that we use to search is the date. Files have more than one date, and there's many different ways to search for files using those dates. So we're going to start off here in the Finder. And yeah, sure, you can use Command Space and Spotlight to search for files as well. But if you know you want to find files, it's best to start in the Finder. And we'll actually have more options here to search by date if we start here. So it's always important to start where you want to search. In this case, I'm looking at the Documents folder here. I know the files I want to find are in there. If the files were instead, say, on my archive drive here, I may click on that and start there. You always want to start in the right place. Now, you can use the search field here at the top right to search, and this is great, especially when searching by name or the contents of the file. But if you want to search by date, it can be useful to just go right into the Find utility in the Finder. And you can do that by going to File and then Find or Command F. And you didn't have to enter anything here in the search field to get started. You can go right here where you can search for different things. Like it always gives you the default kind is any. But you can change this from kind to something else, including something, say, like the created date, which will be the date that the file was initially created. So if you created, say, a new Pages document on a certain day, you could use created date to search for it if you knew that date. But there are other kinds of dates that you could search for. Instead of created date, you could choose last modified date. This would be not when the file was created, but the last time it was changed. So you may not remember when you initially created the file, but if you know you worked on it last on the 1st of the month, then you could use last modified date to find it. There are two other kinds of dates as well. One is the last open date. So this is not a property of the file, but a property saved in the file system. It remembers the last time you opened this file, even if you didn't make a change. So if, say, you opened it yesterday at 9 o'clock, you made a change and saved it at 9:30, the last modified date would be 9:30 yesterday. The last open date would be 9 o'clock yesterday. Now, there's a fourth date that you could also use. If you don't see any of these dates here in this list, or you want that fourth date, you can go to Other here, and you can search for these. So, for instance, to find last opened, you could search for that. And you could see here there's a check mark next to it, meaning it's always going to show up in that menu. So it's handy to check the search items that you want to appear there. But in this case, I'm going to look for date added. And I want to add this to the menu as well. Now, I can look here and see, in addition to the other dates, date added. Date added is a special date that tells you when the file was placed in its current location. So this could be the same as the date created if you created the file, saved it, and have never moved it. But if you moved it from one folder to another, date added would change. Also, when you download a file, date added is useful because it'll give you the date that was placed in your downloads folder, not the date it was originally created from wherever you downloaded it from. Now, whichever one of these you choose, let's choose date created here, you can now search using a variety of different methods related to the date. So for instance, here, it starts you within the last, and then you can give it a number of days. You could also give it a number of weeks, months, or years. The idea here is if I want to find all the files that were created within the last, say, 30 days, either on my Mac or, remember, we started in the Documents folder, so now we have that as an option here, we can get a list of all of those files like that. But that's not the only way to search by date. You could search for exactly and give an exact date. And you can use these little arrows here and select things like the month, day, and year and go through these to change the date here. So, for instance, here I could see on February 5th, a bunch of different files were created. Now, you can also use the date there with before and after instead. So this would take that date and just give you things that were created before this day. And then you could do after as well. Let's go to the 4th. So we can see everything created after February 4th. There are also some easy ways to search, say, for today, if you like, or yesterday, or this week, meaning starting on Sunday, or this month, starting on the 1st of the month, or this year, starting on January 1st of this year. If you find these videos valuable, consider joining the more than 3,000 others that support MACMOST through Patreon. You get exclusive content, course discounts, and more. You could read about it at macmost.com/Patreon. Now, no matter which one of these you choose, notice that, for instance, if I choose within the last 30 days, I don't necessarily get them in the order in which they were created. The order is set by the list view columns here. In this case, I've got name, kind, and date last opened, not created date. So if I want to sort by created date, which seems to make the most sense here, I want to add the created date column. So I can control click, right click, or two-finger click anywhere here at the top in the column headings. And then I could add date created. I could also go to view and show view options, or Command J, and add date created there as well. So now I've got the created date, and I can sort by date created. Clicking it again changes the order of the sort. So for instance, if I change to date last modified here and say that's within the last 30 days, I get a lot of results. But I can only sort by date created or date last opened unless I add date modified to this. And now I can sort by date modified in either direction by clicking again and again here. So what if I want to get files that were, say, created or modified within a range? These options don't give me that. I can do within the last 30 days, but I can't say do it last month or a specific range that doesn't include today. Well, the way to do that is you can add multiple items here. So I'm going to say I want the last modified date is before, and let's say February 1st. And then I'm going to click the plus button here on the right and say the last modified date is also after, and then give it, say, January 1st. And now I get files that were modified between those two dates. It doesn't matter which one I started with. I could have done after, first, and then before if I wanted. You don't have to choose the same type of date either. So for instance, I could look for files that haven't been modified this year at all, but were created before, and say, the beginning of the previous year. So files much older than a year old that I haven't modified this year yet. And you can use any of the different dates here to get some interesting results that could help you with your work. Now, what's interesting is that you can actually search for date using the search field here at the top right. You just got to know what to type. If you use date : and then you put a date, or just type a date in there, it's actually going to search for some metadata inside the files that's not as useful as you would think. A lot of files just don't have that information in there. But if you use created and then : and then with no space, you put a date like that, then it will do the same as adding the items here with the plus button. So you can see everything here was created on February 5th. If you want to do modified, you just use modified rather than created. And you would think you would do opened or something like that here, but in fact, there is no kind of shortcut word for last opened. You have to use the actual property, which has the text KMD item last used date, all spelled out like that. Capitalization matters. And now you'll get last opened on February 5th. And likewise, if you want date added, you need to do KMD item date added like this for date added. And we could see here that gives us things where the date added was February 5th. Now let's go back to created here. And let's say we want a range. It's actually really easy to do a range here. I could just put two dates with a dash, 1/1/2026 dash like that. And it's going to give me things between those dates. So if I want to include the 5th, I need to go one more there. And you could do the same with modified and the other two as well. You could also use less than and greater than. So if you just want something to be after January 1st, you can do greater than 1/1/2026 like that. and it gives you things where the date created is after January 1st, 2026. Reverse that, and you'll see that you get things from before January 1st, 2026. So try to learn these techniques if you find yourself often searching for files by date. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. Want to know about every new MACMOST video each week? Sign up for the absolutely free MACMOST email newsletter at macmost.com/newsletter.